and we are live. All right. Welcome to episode technically 4, but 3 of the Man Cave Report.
Yep.
Technical difficulties with Tuesday Booze Day with Luca and myself, Carlos.
This is what we get for using a Chinese-made product, I suppose.
Imported.
Dude, yeah, imported. Like Tsingtao beer, imported for sure.
Yeah.
Dude, so we were just talking offline about NASCAR, the MVP of the current virtue signaling team.
Most likely the least expected to do something like this.
I know.
Banning Confederate flags from all races.
It was definitely on the Richter scale of things that I would have thought were going to happen. This would have registered a 1.5, you know?
Yeah, fair enough.
Small enough that you don't feel it, but big enough that maybe there's a needle that moves somewhere.
I mean, I don't think anyone saw that coming. It's a really big thing, but yeah, most of their fan base is all white Americans. So,
you know what's funny though is it seems like for the most part the response has been pretty positive. I spent the better part of today on just having ESPN radio on in the background, listening to the likes of Jason Fitz, who was a country touring, I think, publicist back in the day for, like 25, 30 years. He lived in the South. And then you have folks like Will Kane, who is probably the most prominent, quote unquote, Southern voice in sports media currently. And both of them were lauding the decision by NASCAR as long overdue, but also the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the right decision. I'm still surprised, and I'm kind of on the fence of being happy they're tearing down those statues of either slave owners or of Confederate generals or anything like that. I'm all in favor because that shouldn't still be represented on the public.
No, I think that it's not the argument that it is somehow erasing history, in my opinion, is not necessarily made with the right frame of thought in mind. I think that you have museums and, history institutions like that can spend the time dedicating a full background of whatever positive and negative features you want to add to that person. But I think the idea of deifying almost anybody in a public forum to that way is a bit misguided, because you're creating a theological figure out of an individual, and people are imperfect. There's always, if you dig enough, you're going to find something in someone's past that isn't positive, and you can nitpick everyone to death. And I think there's a reason why there should be a separation in some ways of church and state. And I think if you're going to deify somebody and put statues up of them, that is in some by some loose connection similar to a deity, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a
and we have places for that, right?
Separation.
It's like why there's no Jesus hanging on a cross in like a public square,
Right.
There's churches and there's institutions where you can show your support or learn, gather information, what however you want to interact with those cultural aspects. It's totally up to the individual. But I think in general, it's setting a interesting precedent when you tear down these, very public features and in areas where they may not agree with your decision to do so.
Highly disagree with those decisions, man. It's but I mean, like I said, I believe those things shouldn't be up still, and I kind of agree that there are museums, there are institutions where history won't be erased. They literally dedicate their time to preserving history, writing about it, good or bad, and having all the facts down. But throw a hissy fit over a statue not being publicly displayed in a park where children go and ask their dad, "Hey, what's that?" and take a trip down really bad memory lane.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in some ways, by doing so, you're creating an opportunity to not allow someone to teach their child about what good or bad a person did by not having the statues in public places. But I think that's a razor thin edge too. That's what history museums and books and things like that are for. You don't necessarily need to have, you know, figures in certain places. You can record, I think even more appropriately, events that happened at particular locations and just talk about the people that were there without having to dedicate an entire effigy just to one person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, man. It's a crazy time, but you know, hats off to NASCAR for basically just destroying that part of history from the races and not having Confederate flags. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure there's going to be a lot of news about the first couple of races where people are still going to show up with their Confederate flags, or they're going to be 100 feet away from the entrance, or some bullshit like that. But
yeah, you know,
I get first
think, yeah, I think I definitely don't think we want to erase history, though, right? I think you may have used that term a little bit loosely, but we don't want to erase history, because if you don't know what happened, then you know, you're
right,
doomed
yeah,
to repeat it, kind of thing, right? But I agree totally that having figures, you know, placed in a particular public setting that, you know, are controversial in any way is probably not the way to do it for anybody. And you know, I would include the forefathers. I would include just about any past figure, because nobody's perfect. You know, you can always nitpick and
nobody.
find something. You know, like our forefathers did a lot of great things, but they also owned slaves. So, you know, having statues in public of, you know, this president or that president or this person or that historical figure, you're asking to, I think, create a wedge between some folks who support that person unconditionally and some folks who don't. So just put it where it belongs, you know, inside a museum, inside some sort of semi-private but public space that people can interact with it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
You
I mean,
know,
they have walking tours everywhere, man. You can even do a walking
yeah,
tour from home.
yeah. Hold on, I think is that the guy? No, it's somebody else. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
man, it's
What do you think about the First Amendment argument of it, though? Because there are some people that are making the distinction that by prohibiting folks from wearing certain, you know, garments that have a flag on it, or bringing a flag or a towel or whatever. What do you think about the First Amendment implications of that?
well, I mean, especially right now, the First Amendment's getting thrown around in both arguments. Uh, I mean, look at it from the perspective of what's happening with Black Lives Matter protests. White people are actually doing the horrible George Floyd challenge, which is reenacting what happened. And they're doing it right in front of protesters, trying to incite them, trying to piss them off. And, you know, technically it's First Amendment right. Whether you want to say it's by speech, by action, what you're wearing, what you are portraying out to the world. I technically they can do it, but it just shows what human beings are amongst us. I mean, good on the employers who are taking action and being like, we saw you doing this, you know, we're terminating your contract, you don't represent what this business represents, or you know, them getting fired, paid leave of absence, whatever you want to call it. At least something is being done, but at the same time, everybody has that freedom, everybody has that constitutional right.
I think what people need to remember about the First Amendment, because this is something that I think is used, maybe not intentionally, but it obfuscates the actual intention behind the First Amendment. The First Amendment was written in a time where the folks that lived in the colonial United States were experiencing oppression from the English government. And when they won the Revolutionary War, it was incumbent upon them to create a list of, you know, a Bill of Rights, which is what it ended up being called, that enables you to have certain freedoms against your government for fear of retribution in a tyrannical system, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the First Amendment was the most important because to them it signified the freedom that all citizens are granted, and even maybe people that aren't citizen, but people that engage in, you know, in the United States as an ideology, that you can have statements that contradict the current storyline, that can oftentimes point fingers negatively at the government or at people that are in power, but it's meant to protect you from being imprisoned or improperly punished by the institution, right? So if you do something that goes against a particular business's way of thinking, right? So now NASCAR has this ideology that it's not okay to support certain certain symbols that incite hatred and racism and can make an entire group of people feel ostracized. But you, as an individual, still have the freedom to fly that flag at your house. You can wear that in public areas, and you can't go to jail for it, right?
Right.
So people that want to use it as a rallying cry on the right, saying, oh, they're taking away First Amendment rights, they're being a little bit disingenuous, because the point is to be able to protest against systems. But if you're engaging in a private system's services, like going to a NASCAR race, going to a Major League Baseball stadium, doing any of these things that are operated by a business, they have the freedom to terminate your engagement or your employment, as long as they do it unilaterally, right? Like, you couldn't have an African American wearing a Confederate flag and then going to a NASCAR race and being let in, right? Like, that would be, I think, disingenuous on NASCAR's part. So if you're gonna ban the flag, the Confederate flag, you got to ban it unilaterally. But you, as an individual, outside of that circumstance, can promote your ideas. You can fly that flag in your own property. You can walk it up and down the street, and nobody can do anything about it.
I agree, man. I mean, it's a tricky subject, but I think your explanation of it kind of summed it up pretty well. I mean, I'm just waiting for more companies or events to start doing it as well. I mean, I think the biggest blow would be if Walmart was like, hey, no more Confederate flags on your little scooters. I think that would be the next big surprise of 2020.
You entirely pigeonholed a large group of people who I envision go to Walmart, dude. And that's not okay. Here come the negative comments on YouTube from the 7 people that watched the last video, dude. It's coming.
Our 7 fans.
Dude, the 7 of you, we appreciate. Shit, man. Dude, did you hear about Torrey Hunter's contract situation, about how when he was playing baseball, he wouldn't ever be able to play for Boston as per his contract because of all the racist fans they have there?
Yeah, you kind of told me a little bit about that last time in our last episode.
And I guess one of his contracts that he signed with the Minnesota Twins, where I think he pretty much played his entire career, there was a clause that said, if you trade me, it cannot be to them, because every time I go there, whether it's a kid, whether it's a person that works there or a fan, someone is saying something fucked up to me or to people that look like me, and I'm not having it.
I mean, good for him, but that's kind of fucked up that Boston is like that.
I know, man.
But speaking of New England,
speaking of being berated by random people you've never met, I had my first essential employee verbal berate yesterday, dude.
From who?
Yeah, so I am, in case you folks out there in the internet ether didn't know, I am an essential employee. So show me that respect, put respect on my name. I'm an essential employee, and we have to do a lot of additional sanitation processes as per, county guidelines to try and keep the spread of COVID and the coronavirus down. And somebody wasn't listening to what I was trying to tell them, saying, hey, these don't go there. They have to be cleaned every time someone uses them. So just give them to me, and I'll take care of them. And this person and his partner or friend or whatever, and I was maybe 10 feet away, and I don't speak quietly, as you're well familiar with. He just ignored me and just threw this item in with all of the clean shit, which meant now all that stuff had to get cleaned too. So I just kind of looked at him and his partner or his friend, his acquaintance, and said, that was the clean stuff. And then she was not having it. So a couple of F-bombs, and next time we're just going to throw it in the middle of the street and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, I hope you guys have a lovely evening, and I hope no one impugns your freedoms ever again. And that was today. Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened to you. That sounds silly that could happen at a supermarket where essential people put their lives on the line. But man, that's
I think it's just indicative of the sort of weird situation that we're all in. Everyone is on edge, and the slightest inconvenience or the slightest bit of confrontation that you encounter sets people off, man.
Dude, every day, man, my whole news feed is just basically either encounters with random people. I mean, there's a video circulating of a Native American woman just getting yelled at by a white woman, and it ends in the
Down
most
in
anticlimactic thing. But it was
dude,
just
we gotta play that. Gotta give the credit where it's due. Was that the lady down in Torrance, California?
no. Well, I think this was in Arizona, but I don't think we can play it because of copyright infringement, YouTube stuff.
Dude. Yeah.
But anyways, it was pretty anticlimactic, and this Native American woman slaps this white woman in the most gentle but serious way I've ever seen, and she just storms off.
Gentle but serious.
It was like a,
how do you
it
do?
was like a South Park slap, you know, when they just go.
Oh my
and starts
god.
crying. It was almost identical to that.
That is it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, but it's happening everywhere now, man. It's people are just getting riled up over the littlest things, or racism is really showing its ugly face in a lot more people than we suspected.
Dude, YouTube will be fine. We're just gonna give credit. It's ABC7 racist tirade. Woman exercising in park near Los Angeles. I think it was Torrance. Was told to go back to Asia by this. They call her SoCal Karen. That's her name now.
SoCal Karen. I like how Karen is becoming the trending name for white women.
Dude, if you want to put it up for everyone to see, we can just watch it. And I sent it in the chat.
Sent it in the chat. All right.
It's just incredible, man.
Let's see.
Dude, they're everywhere, man. The Karens are out in force, tracking you down. If you're trying to exercise in a park and you don't look like her, she will come after you.
Dude, I can't even believe how those sweet old Asian women are doing Tai Chi anymore.
Dude, that's because they're the ones who won't care. Like if that woman just rolled up on their little Tai Chi party, they would just, that'd be it. That lady would just be flat on her back. Because those, dude, they don't give a fuck, dude. They'll come after you. It's like old Italian grandmas too, man. They'll just come after you. They don't care. Like they don't care what your age is. Or I saw a video from a few years ago about these motorcycle dudes who were trying to break into a really expensive store selling jewelry in where was it? It's like Manchester. And this like 70-year-old woman with her purse just comes out of nowhere from across the street, starts beating them with her bag, and they all get on their scooters and ride away. And one dude falls over. He just like starts to go off the curb and just like, and the police show up with their nightsticks, like all strolling. They weren't even running. They were just like strolling across the street like, man, this doesn't happen here very often. Someone gonna rob. Old lady takes him down.
Dude,
finish my scone first.
Old ladies for the win. It's saying as soon as I do share screen, it says I need to quit Zoom and restart it for my computer to share my screen.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
I kid
crazy.
you not. I have it all. Oh, wait. There it is. I don't know why I said that before. All right.
Excellent.
Let's see.
And then on the top right, if you hit the 2 bar, it'll show both of our faces as this woman. And she's like berating.
Right, wait. How do I do this? To show
so on the top right of your screen where your face is, there should be an option to hit like a thumbnail video, and there's like a 2 instead of a 1, and it'll put all 2 on the screen.
There it is. Yeah. All right.
But I like how she's wearing, dude. She's got like her sun hat on. She's ready to go. She's got her glasses. She's got her mask. She's wearing it like a necklace because she's trying to keep safe. So she's wearing it below her face.
Dude, yeah. I have not seen this.
Well, Mark, the mayor of Torrance tells us that the police department is investigating this incident. The victim in the video, she didn't want to go on camera, but she did give us permission to show you the video of her being verbally assaulted.
Oh my God.
Get permission. Perfect.
Dude, look down below. It says that like of the of the roughly 300 people that have voted, 43 of them have voted down. Like, what are they voting down about? They're like, oh, we support this woman's ability to be racist. This woman just walks through the fucking workout, dude. She's trying to work out on the stairs. Fucking hijacks the workout. Just like, nope, not here, not in my park.
The victim is filming.
Wait, don't you go to a gym? Are you serious?
The state, go back to whatever Asian country you belong in. Okay, race.
Oh my God. This is someone's grandma, dude.
Wow.
Going off. bro.
actions of the racist
Dude, that's
Dude, shout out to ABC7 for just having this like just out there for the world to see, and now we can share it to the few people who somehow watch it who
yeah.
haven't seen this. Oh my god.
Dude, that's go back to this. Dude, that's crazy, man.
Dude.
There's videos of like I mean that's probably a summation of everything that's going on right now. There's an old white man who was taking down flyers in a park and grabbed a 10-year-old girl by the arm saying, "Give me those flyers." And it was one of those moments like if someone wasn't recording, what could have happened?
Bro, did you? I mean, you've probably seen it because it's all over Facebook. Like, okay, maybe not on Facebook as much anymore, but there's this video circulating of MPD just straight gutting and slashing all four tires of everyone's cars parked nearby the protests.
Yeah. What the fuck is the reason?
I guess they're protesting getting defunded. So they're just slashing random cars.
Man, hats off to Minneapolis.
We're going down. We're taking y'all with us.
That was dope. I mean, even Newsom just said that he's going to stop private prisons and something else. Yeah.
Dude, it's pretty wild, man. Personally, I don't know how I feel about the idea of abolishing police. I think to just make a blanket statement like get rid of all police is not the answer, but I do think a greater investment and more time spent on navigating these disenfranchised communities and helping them come up by working with community leaders and talking with people that actually live there and getting real input from people that really want change for their community versus simply paying for more militarized police to roam those streets, you know? I think the problem with doing that is you end up having a force that is entirely looking for and ready for any type of conflict, no matter how trivial, and it can lead to sometimes catastrophic consequences. And although in general, it seems like policing throughout the United States has improved over the last 50 years, that doesn't mean to say that it couldn't be improved further.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I think that with everything that's going on, what we're seeing is there's a few bad apples everywhere. It's not just one concentrated area. It's not the East Coast. It's not the South. It's everywhere. And I think it's making the problem apparent that there has to be changes within the police department, within the training, within the unions, within qualified immunity, you name it. I mean, there are a lot of good cops out there. I know a couple myself, and I feel like defunding and just getting rid of police altogether is not the right decision, but I see the need for change or some sort of change to happen.
Would you be comfortable reminding me what qualified immunity means?
So I would have to kind of look it up, but the short version of it is they cannot act like they can't take you to trial for something that hasn't happened in the past before. So something has to happen, and there has to be a record of it, so the courts can go back to it and reference that to process a new case against a police officer. But I'm going to look that up just to be sure.
That, I mean, if that's what that is, then that creates a very interesting conundrum, right? Because if there isn't a precedent set for a particular transgression, then the likelihood of you winning a case by bringing that transgression to light is slim. So it's almost like the argument of you need to get a job to have experience, but you have to have experience to get a job. You know, like if you don't, yeah, that seems. So qualified immunity is a legal doctrine in the United States federal law which shields government officials from being held personally liable for discretionary actions performed within their capacity. Go down to that first thing where it says for police officers.
All but plainly incompetent or those who knowingly violate the law. Law enforcement officers are entitled to qualified immunity when their actions do not violate a clearly established statutory or constitutional right.
Click on that thing. I want to read more about this because I thought I read a little bit about it, but I feel like I might have missed this.
Well, this are entitled to qualify. Test determines the entitlement. The officer is judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene rather than the vision of 2020 hindsight.
Keep going. Qualified immunity must be raised by the officer, protects the officer individual capacity and not the governmental entity employing the officer. I wonder. Let's just click on the Wikipedia.
I clicked on this when I was looking it up, but it doesn't really help.
Well, keep going down. I want to look at some of the. So let's see. Pearson versus Ray. 1967 Supreme Court justified the needs for qualified immunity, arguing that a policeman's lot is not so unhappy that he must choose between being charged with dereliction of duty or of duty if he does not arrest when he had probable cause and must be what? Mulcted? Okay. Keep going down. I feel like I read this earlier, and there was something from the Supreme Court about the fine line between this.
Difficulty of suing public officials, police brutality.
Here's this one. So this was from the Supreme Court, I believe. Yeah, Sonia Sotomayor, when she said, describing sanctioning of shoot first, think later approach, she stated, "We have not hesitated to summarily reverse courts for wrongly denying officers protection of qualified immunity in cases in the use of force. But we rarely intervene where courts wrongfully afford officers the benefit of qualified immunity in the same cases." So basically what she just said is that we won't reverse decisions made by previous courts we will oftentimes and have not hesitated to reverse decisions from courts, like lower courts that say, hey, this officer shouldn't have done this. We will reverse those decisions way more often because we believe in qualified immunity. But it is very rare where we do the opposite of that. So they're basically just agreeing with that. Wait, what? That's crazy.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, it just shows how protected police officers are.
And in a lot of ways, I would say rightfully so, right? It's a difficult job to do, but it almost makes you wonder if it's a symbiotic relationship where you have, people that don't believe in the system because it is in some ways corrupt or not acting in the people's best interest. But then you have, that's just kind of crazy to think about.
Man, it's yeah, it is crazy. The police, I mean, right now, I would not want to be a cop right now. Not at all.
Yeah, and this is something that I think is a unilateral thought among a lot of police departments. And a lot of them say that they're being called and used in situations that they're not adequately trained for, right? So in some instances, they're being called to domestic disputes or situations where somebody has, is under the influence and is acting irrationally and not in the right mind, and they're being called to try and navigate these situations when the majority of their training is about, catching a criminal. And I think there's a huge canyon of differences between a criminal committing an act like armed robbery, assault, anything within the, I would say, more aggressive and violent crime paradigm versus people who commit nonviolent, you got to use that term kind of with quotations, because what someone sees as nonviolent is possibly more violent to someone else. It's kind of a subjective term. But
yeah, I mean,
their training is primarily in dealing with very escalated, heightened emotion type situations, and a lot of their training doesn't cover things like de-escalation to large extents. Maybe there's some coverage of it, but it's not maybe a focal point. It's more of an afterthought.
And but I mean, that kind of goes to how the training or their path of training is followed. I mean, they're devoting so much time to combat and weapons, and so little time to de-escalation. I mean, it kind of already installs this preset notion in every police officer's mindset that de-escalation is just not that important, that I have to focus on this stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to jump and navigate all those different things at once. You know, like an officer is trained to deal with some of the worst situations imaginable. To then put them in a situation that is equally as bad but requires a totally different character trait or tact or ability, it's, I think, incumbent to put some of that money and education into either having more service members that work with police to help de-escalate situations, where they're the first line of approaching a potentially non-aggressive but deranged, not in the right state of mind type of person, versus having someone who's already seen as a threat to them interact with them and then escalate the situation in an unintended way. So I think in some ways it kind of makes sense where you have to almost, and I think the key word is empathy. You have to try to put yourself in these folks' shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're not equipped to handle a situation that they're not familiar with, but there are lots of people who, with the right kind of training, would be far more skillful at navigating those spots and could come up with more, I don't want to say reasonable, but more calm and collected resolutions versus folks that are, and I mean, again, it's hard to be a master of everything. Not everyone can just be a jack of all trades to the fullest extent. So if you're someone who's trained to do a certain thing and then you're put into a situation that requires a totally different skill set, it's not going to be easy to navigate. So you need, I think, a greater breadth of skilled professionals that aren't just militarized in their way of handling circumstances. They're being trained in de-escalating, they're being trained in how to deal with, like, let's say it's a domestic issue, right? And maybe it's not violent yet, but you have two angry people going at each other. You instead have maybe a marriage count. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, instead of just sending, a particular group of folks that are trained in a very particular way, you send folks that have a different training that might be able to de-escalate and come up with more calm and less violent resolutions.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I first heard about, like, alternative training for police officers. It was when Andrew Yang was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said that he wants to train all police officers in jiu-jitsu. And that is a plain, simple way to subdue either a suspect, a criminal, or anything without really putting the life in danger. Because one, they know exactly what they're doing, they know what the pressure points are, and they know how to, control a body. I think the other day, Joe Rogan even explained it himself. He's like, if that man who had the knee on the neck, if he would have just had his knee in the center of the back, that suspect's not going anywhere. And that's just simple knowledge that could be taught, instead of, this is the neck, this is a weak point, I might as well attack this part, without really thinking, what if I do this wrong? What if I cut out his airway? What if, the worst happens?
I think that was something that I was thinking about too, is that even if it's not jiu-jitsu necessarily, but any form of martial arts where you know how to defend yourself, one of the first things, and because you were a black belt, right?
Yeah, I've done taekwondo for 8 years.
And I did karate for like 6 years. I was one test away from getting a black belt, but we won't get into those details. So I can't even brag about being a black belt. I'm just the guy that almost got there. It's like the dude that didn't show up to his last couple of days of classes and didn't graduate. It's like, yeah, you almost did it, but not quite. But one of the things they instill in you, and you can attest to this, is this idea of self-control and de-escalating situations. And maybe that's why sometimes in tense moments, I'll let people walk people like Nick or other folks, I'll let them sort of walk all over me more, because I don't need to prove to anybody anything. And unless I feel like my life is in danger or someone is physically attacking me, then maybe I'll take necessary actions. But it's not something that I need to run towards. And in fact, I will actively move out of those situations, because at the end of the day, it's not worth the trouble.
Right. And that's the recognition of those situations. It's just, I think what I had, our motto was might for right. Like, only use what you know when it's like either the last resort or it's the moment to use it. But if
Yeah.
you just have, someone who's just drunk trying to get in your face or saying a couple things, obviously, since you've had the right training, you've had all those classes, like, all right, I don't need to deal with this bullshit. I'm just gonna, stay quiet or walk away. But that's, I guess, the difference with all these police officers who go through this intense training, but they only focus on one aspect, which is everybody's out to get you pretty much. And you have to defend yourself by pulling your gun first.
Yeah. I mean, you remember that. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last Thursday with Cody, but that scene from the Patriot Act with Hassan Minhaj where they're kind of in jest sitting at a bar and they're just playing a game of slap hands. And
With
that's
the finger guns, yeah.
well, and the dude who he was talking to is a 5-year former police officer and law professor at like Southern somewhere university, or is like he's in law to some degree, and firsthand account from someone who's been through the training says it's not a job where they train you to de-escalate. They just train you how to act first and act some ways preemptively. It's not even about take 3 steps and draw. It's about on the second step being preemptive about the third step.
Yep. I mean, I think the way that they are taught is just treat every situation as a hostile situation. And I mean, going back to police officers being trained in any martial art form, I said jiu-jitsu specifically because of what I heard on the Joe Rogan podcast, but I think that being able to just know those special pressure points or just know how to control a suspect would make the world of difference everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't even have to be like train for years. Just go through like
I know a 10-week course.
Like, dude, right? Like, so something I can't even remember how many hours, but we're talking like months and months and months of training in the police academy before you even get to post academy training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling me you can't fit 20 to 40 hours worth of jujitsu training in there, and then every few months you have a trainer come in and just kind of goes through the basics with you all over again. Like, I think there's ways to not cut funding, but to use it more effectively. You use it for situations like that. You instead train certain officers who have more of an empathetic and sympathetic demeanor. You train them on how to work and navigate difficult situations without, it's like having a hostage negotiator, right? He shows up to help navigate a situation before it becomes chaotic, before it becomes more chaotic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think the idea of abolishing police and, getting rid of them all, because, I mean, we can look at the numbers, man, but in terms of police encounters and number of deaths by police over the last, 50 years, the per capita rate has dropped pretty significantly, and the overall numbers have dropped pretty significantly too. So I think we need to not throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are so many good police officers, but they need to start doing more to step up against the bad ones, and unions need to not protect the bad ones, because that essentially harms everybody. Because if you're protecting the bad ones, they can continue to do bad things, which hurts the community, and then the good ones have to put up with the community backlash for the bad ones acting poorly.
Right. And I'm starting to see like a little bit of an uptick in, I guess, I don't want to say a unified solution or a unified step forward amongst people, but it's calling it out. It's not so much as to like, you see it and don't say anything, or you don't like, react to it, or you don't intervene, but more so just if you see something bad, just tell someone, say something. And especially with racism, how it is today. I mean, I think there's only one video that I've seen from a New York cop, and it was a white cop who had pushed a protester. And it was a older black lady, and another black cop went up to him and was berating him in front of all protesters, all cops.
I think
that's the first step is,
dude, here's the thing, man.
It.
People are willing to concede their position a little bit if they see a little bit of concession from the other side. And I think trickle-down economics doesn't work, but I'll tell you for sure that good leadership trickles down. If you're the type of leader that steps into a spot and is like, look, we're not going to put up with this shit. We're not going to allow the department to get corrupt. If you see some shit, you report that, and we start an investigation. And the DA works not only to prosecute bad people in the streets, but to make sure that we are, as a unit, as a brotherhood, held, or a sisterhood, or whatever hood, like just we're held accountable to the same or even better standards because we literally have life in the balance.
Yep. That is the greatest point you can make is it's life in the balance. It's not so much more of like, oh, they're being a little tougher on them. No, it's the straw that broke the camel's back because it's just so many lives lost that could have been avoided.
Well, and and just that, it's even more so the fact that the people that commit these actions are able in some ways to get away with it because of all of the different things that we've kind of gone over and touched in a little bit of detail in the last half hour or so. And nobody is out here to say that anybody of a particular profession are bad, right? There are bad teachers, but most of them are really good. There's bad priests, but most of them are really good. There's bad officers. There's bad in every profession, but
right.
For the greater good, it's more important for the people that are good, that are in those professions, to call them out, and for the people in power, whether it be the commissioner, whether it be the DA, whomever, has to be able to step up with the rest of the good ones in unison to take out the bad apples and to put them to task. Because if you don't do that, if you don't hold yourself accountable, of course there's going to be problems like this. And especially now with people out of work and being frustrated and angry, it's just like you said, the straw that broke the camel's back. It's, the last little bit of heat that was added to the boiling water before the lid came off, right?
Yeah.
You got to do something. And if you're not holding people accountable, if we're going to have to be held accountable for our actions as citizens, then the people that have direct control over our freedoms and our, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Like, that's quite literally in the balance.
I mean, that should be like a no-brainer for people in power or organizations or police departments. It should just be everyone should hold everyone accountable, especially if they see something that's racist, if they see something that crosses the line, or if they see something that is endangering life. It's just the amount of power to just say, hey, I need to tell someone and action needs to be taken.
Yeah. No,
Going
man,
on a little side note, did you see the new trailer for the movie by Russell Crowe?
What?
Dude, there's a new movie coming out, and it's called Unhinged, and it's Russell Crowe, and he gets cut off in traffic. That's it. And the woman doesn't apologize, and he becomes unhinged and just loses his shit. And that is the movie that was timed to come out during all of these protests, after this pandemic where people have been stuck at home. And that's the movie that they choose to run.
Is that on Netflix?
No, it's going to come out in theaters. That's the big push for July.
Oh my God.
I laughed, even though I shouldn't have laughed. I laughed at the timing of this movie coming out right now.
The juxtaposition between that and everything that's going on right now.
Someone fucked up, but it's coming out no matter what.
I don't even know if it's fucked up, man. Like, maybe they were just sitting on this for a while and now they're like, okay, this is the moment.
This is the perfect moment.
Dude, we're going to get such free publicity. And they are literally right now getting free publicity. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's that was a random YouTube ad that I saw that just said Russell Crowe Unhinged, and I was like, oh, I'll see this trailer. And when I saw halfway through it, I was like, oof, this is, yeah. I would want to say bad timing, but if you look at it the other way, I guess it's great timing with how we are.
I gotta find some. Did you hear about I know we kind of talked about it already, but it's hard not to just talk about Prince Andrew every chance we get.
Oh my God. That guy,
oh, man, dude, he looks like he is the epitome of, when you think of some sort of monarch figure or someone part of the oligarchy, like, that's the kind of person you for sure think of. Like, that's probably to a T.
He's gonna come over here?
I don't know.
I don't think he will. I don't see how he would think that's a good idea.
I did 10 hours ago. Can you allow me to share my screen?
Yeah. How do I? Oh. No, you can just go ahead. Right? There it is.
Dope. All right, let's get it. Play video. Lame. Well, in any case, the saga with Epstein and all of his ties will never die. This will go on forever. This will live in infamy.
I mean, the amount, that spider web of interconnection with celebrities, royalty, high profile businessmen, quote unquote president. It's too long. The list is too long for it to end anytime soon.
It is, dude.
Famous picture.
Here's the picture, dude.
I don't remember that at all.
He wasn't even there, dude. He does not remember anything. There he is, right there with 17-year-old Virginia Roberts, Giuffre.
Dude,
the
interview he gives where he just says, I have no recollection of this picture. It's like,
I've never seen someone blink so fast in my entire life, dude. Here's the thing. I'm not a psychological expert. I know nothing of, tells when it comes to people lying. But the little bits that I've read, almost unilaterally across the board, say that someone who is shifting in their chair constantly or blinking like there's the light flashing in their eyes is probably not being entirely truthful.
no.
And considering you have this picture and a very credible witness who has claimed to see many people on the island that were either confirmed in the little black book of Epstein or were seen by the dude who installed all of the software and hardware for the cameras that Epstein had everywhere. Like, yeah, it's an intricate security system, but there's also a camera like on the underside of the toilet. Like there's maybe you should probably question what you're building, guy. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's actually true, but it would not surprise me, not in the least.
His no sweating defense is,
Dude,
if we have any fans in the YouTube comments, if you can tell me if that's anywhere credible, that you can not, you have a condition where you don't sweat and then it goes away and then you start sweating even harder during an interview.
Even the New York Times, do you know when the New York Times and Fox are sharing similar thoughts that something's there, man. Prince Andrew and U.S. prosecutor and NAFRI dispute over Epstein case.
I mean, I can't imagine that he would come to the United States to be interrogated, but if he did.
You know what's going to happen? They're going to do roughly the same thing that they did for our dear sweet number 45 when they said, okay, look, we're going to give you a few questions we want you to ask. We want to ask you, and you and your lawyers can sit down and fucking answer them. And they're going to write it out in crayon, just like Trump did. He drew cute little pictures in crayon. He's like, oh, see Russia over here, me over here. See, we're not together. Like that was basically his little crayon denial of what happened. And that's what they're going to do for this. I mean, there is no way. If he does sit down for an interview, it is going to be exactly the same as Epstein with the U.S. attorneys in the video where they ask him a question and he says, well, I'd really love to answer that, but my attorneys have advised me that I should plead the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. All right, dude. Yep. It's definitely something innocent people have to say. And I know, I know that there's plenty of innocent people that would say that because why wouldn't you if you had the type of resources that he had? I don't know, man.
I would want really the same detective or prosecutor who I forgot which case. I mean, he had so many cases against him, Epstein. But there was one where that guy just started getting under his skin. It's like, is it true that you have an egg-shaped penis? And just really start pissing him off. And I'm pretty sure that Prince Andrew would start sweating bullets. Just, I can't handle this. Bro, that's not true.
That's one of the unfortunate facts that I will never, ever forget is that, unfortunately, Jeffrey Epstein had an egg-shaped penis. Oh, my God.
His reaction, too, was just, are you kidding?
Oh, dude. And then there's this. Then there's this absolute.
I can't believe he defended his action.
He had an 82-page indictment with like a 53-page. Or no, it was like 82 pages worth of information and a 53-page indictment. And he's like, look, we at the district attorney's office just can't be bothered doing this. And then if you really want to get into quote unquote conspiracy theories, because folks on the right love to make shit up like Obama's from Kenya or is a Muslim, but there is a direct link between this dude, Acosta, and Donald Trump. And there is also a direct link between Donald Trump and Epstein. And there is also another connection between all of them and Prince Andrew. So, I mean, you really want to get into some nonsense like this dude right here.
That guy, I mean, I got to say, the balls to come out and give a press conference and defend that you did the right thing with that plea bargain.
You really wanted to help them, but as a group, they decided that they couldn't.
I like his statement, which said, like, whenever we look for a plea bargain, we look for time served for the accused, and that's what we got. We got him to serve time. I was like, what?
Dude, that is almost as ridiculous as the Utah State Bar defending the decision of the judge to only give that pedophile in fucking Utah 210 days for 13,000 images and videos of child porn, bro.
I mean, I don't know, man.
If the United States and the rest of the world isn't run by fucking closet pedos that either get too brazen for their actions, they get busted like Jeffrey Epstein, or they find ways to sweep it under the rug like the dude from Altran. There's this huge conglomerate, and this guy has only one photo on the internet, but anytime someone uses it, it's copyrighted and immediately taken down. But he's a guy who runs this large organization that buys up millions of dollars worth of small business and independent newspapers. A lot of these small newspapers are the same newspapers that break stories regarding child porn, and just buys them up and then sells them out. And this dude also lived around the corner from Jeffrey Epstein in Palm Beach. So, like, if there isn't just a giant boys club / little boys club in fucking Palm Beach with all these rich billionaires and hedge fund managers, then my name's Nancy, dude. There's some shit going on down there in Florida. You Floridians are protecting all these fucking sickos with your no income tax bullshit and whatever the fuck else is going on. That's right, Florida. I'm calling you out.
Yeah.
What's up, Cody?
I'm here. I just came in at that last thing. You know, there's a reason why, you know, the Florida man is infamous. Every day you see Florida man ate someone's face off, or Florida man dunked his dick in someone's chocolate or something of the sort.
Let's give a moment of silence for our good friend Prince Andrew. It's only a minute, but we get to see him suddenly develop a sweating habit that he didn't have when he was 29 and sweating all over a 17-year-old in Pedo Island out there in the Virgin Islands. Come on. Oh, dude, am I running too many things at once? Probably.
Yeah, man, it's the guy. I don't know. He's up there with Acosta. He's just trying to defend himself by saying, "Hey, I don't remember this happening, so it couldn't have happened." And I don't sweat back then, but now I do.
I'll send it to you guys. Maybe you can play it, Carlos. But Mr. I don't sweat suddenly develops a sweating habit when he becomes 60-something. It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I sweat a lot when I was younger, and now it's just like I don't sweat at all.
Dude, I definitely do not sweat at all anymore.
Yeah, Epstein was arrested on charges of sex trafficking and abusing underage.
Yes.
One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia.
Watch me. I'm blinking so fast in anticipation of any question.
She was very specific about that night. She described dancing with you, and you.
Shout out to the sun. Thank you for this.
And that you
glorified and beautiful cut of this fucking pedophile over here.
With the sweating, because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that.
Dude, you should have just said "don't sweat," because like now you're saying I suddenly grew out of it. Come on, dude.
I suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. And I simply, it was.
Dude, also not looking her in the eye when he's answering, that's another sign of fucking trying to hide some shit. Dude.
The stuttering.
We now understand that.
I'll even give the stuttering a pass, because honestly, sometimes I stutter when I'm even in non-stressful situations, so I can even give that, but The not making eye contact and the
Why would you remember that?
constant
Why would you
blinking
Pizza Express birthday and bring it home?
because
together, right? It's like maybe one of those things would be
He
explained.
won't like look her right in the eye. Look, he's
That's
like
what I'm
going
saying.
one way or the other, and then like
I've only been to Woking a couple of times, and I remember it weirdly distinctly. But as soon as somebody reminded me,
weirdly distinctly.
He's blinking so fast. All right, that's
Yo, okay. Can someone explain to me? I don't even know. All right, who is Prince Andrew? Is it like the Queen's nephew or something? Like what? Like
It's the
is it
Duke of
Charles's
something.
brother? Like who is it?
I think it's one of the sons, right? Not the queen's son, but like the grandson. So that's why he's a prince.
Well, I don't think he's a prince. He's a duke. He's the Duke of York.
He's a duke.
He's a member of the British royal family, for whatever that means.
Sure.
I mean, dude, he was only born in Buckingham Palace, so he probably has no affiliation to that royal family.
No, it's Charles's brother. It's Charles's little brother.
Queen Elizabeth. He's the son of Queen Elizabeth II.
Queen Elizabeth's
and,
son, yeah.
And Prince Philip.
Well,
dude.
What? Yeah, I mean, if by any miracle he does decide to come to the U.S. to get deposed or interrogated or whatever you want to call it, I will be watching with popcorn and waiting to see how much he blinks and says he doesn't.
Yeah, it ain't happening. You know it ain't because.
Oh yeah,
if he gets hooked up to a lie detector machine, that thing will start beeping before they even ask him a question. Just be like, nope, don't talk, don't do it.
Yeah, I don't think he would, but I mean, if he did, that would be good to the case because I'm pretty sure he would mess up or trip himself up, and hopefully something comes from it. But I doubt he will.
I'm pretty sure Carol Baskin is behind all of this, since the Tiger Man is behind Cody.
Yeah, it's all Carol Baskin. Carol Baskin molested Prince Andrew. It's a learned behavior. So,
dude, the molesting apple doesn't fall far from the tree, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Carol Baskin is to blame for all of 2020's problems.
Dude.
Carol Baskin is secretly a super genius villain.
Yeah.
Speaking of super genius villains, I've managed to actually watch all 4 episodes of the Unabomber series on Netflix.
What? There's a Unabomber
series? There's a Unabomber series?
Well, it was from, I think, 2018 or 19, like late 2018 or 2019. But yeah, they went through, it's 4 50-minute episodes all about him. And just how the fine line between genius and insanity, and I don't even use the term insanity to mean that he was insane, but when you get to a certain level of smart, the likelihood of you becoming some almost deviant in some way, I'm almost certain there is a similar correlation where they move in parallel lines in similar directions. Like the smarter you get, the greater your likelihood of being in some ways deviant. And this dude had something, it was like 165 was his IQ, which is way, like, as far as genius goes, that starts at like 130, like 131. And yeah, I think ultra genius is like over 160. So he was like up there in the super genius category, and like, built all of his bombs from scratch in this little house that he bought out in Montana. And it's insane. You need to watch
well, yeah,
it.
I mean, like, don't they say like most serial killers are technically geniuses?
Yeah, I mean,
they're most of them have like, so to qualify for Mensa, it's like once you need a 160 IQ or something like that. But and like anything over like 150 is like, like you're way too smart for your own good.
Yeah, you're gonna get put in gifted and talented classes and all that.
Yeah.
But
he got to, I mean, it wasn't super young, but he skipped a few grades and like graduated from Harvard when he was like 18.
Yeah.
And then became a teacher of, mathematics for a while, and then dipped out to go live his life bombing institutions because he believed that the technocentricity of humankind was absolutely decimating the world and the earth and nature. So his objective was to take them out. That was his life's goal. His manifesto was effectively all about hating these technocrats and how the world, not even just the United States, was becoming a technocratic, centric institution, and he was all about taking that shit down.
I wonder what he thinks about smartphones.
Honestly, I think just the thought probably makes the synapses in his brain just pop off.
Yeah.
He was the true one believer of 5G terrorism.
Dude, look, man. 5G. Obama's name has 5 letters. COVID also has 5 letters. Obama, COVID. 5G. Telling you.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the.
Oh wait, there was a couple steps more. There's also the fact that if you take Obama and minus however many terms there were in this century or whatever, it was like 5. And then remember, dude, I sent this long text to you about.
Yeah, it was. I read it and it gave me a little headache, but
dude,
it made sense.
But that's the sort of mental gymnastics that have to happen to get to certain levels of things, right? Like, we can all agree that pedophiles protect themselves through their crazy, sick ways, but I mean, that's more of a social issue, right? Like, if you start looking at things such as vaccines or 5G, you can all prove that using math and science, basically.
Yeah, I mean, everyone could go into like a beautiful mind. Not to bring up Russell Crowe again, but you can go into a beautiful mind mode where you're just connecting shit here, this with this with this. Obviously, it's connected. Bats are sending radio waves through 5G.
Dude, literally anything that is electric is sending out waves all the time.
Yeah.
And people are living longer now by like double than they were 120 years ago on average. So I don't know, man.
I think we'll be okay with 5G.
I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
But what if the cell towers, bro?
The only thing, people who won't be cool with 5G are those with like epilepsy and like the screens are moving too fast for them.
Yeah, but they're similar to the same kind of folks that would have trouble sitting in a room with a strobe light. Like, you just have to make sure that you're being safe in those situations. It's like how some people can't go out in the sun for too long or they'll get a sunburn immediately. There's risk around every corner, but you got to weigh the pros and the cons, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to download a movie in a millisecond. I'm not trying to fucking wait 5 minutes, all right? Like, send me that 5G, baby. Put it everywhere.
Imagine the 5G gaming that's going to happen, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
the PS5, they just launched new photos for it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
it looks crazy.
Dude, it looks like
all the VR like games that are going to be coming out for PS5 VR. Like, and being able, like, dude, it's gonna be like the Oasis from fucking like Ready Player One, dude.
Dude, it is gonna be like the Oasis. People are gonna be like, "Fuck the world. Let me just put on my goggles. I can be whatever."
Yeah, let me just fucking escape into my game and fuck the real world.
Man, it really makes you think that Cypher was probably right all along in the Matrix.
Dude, right?
When he was like, you know what? Humans have basically just become batteries for the machines. So just plug me back into the machine and let me live my fucking pretend life and just be happy about it and not look outside and realize I'm basically just plugged in through my butthole into this machine and it's sucking my life so that it can continue operating.
Dude, just live blissfully happy.
Dude.
Base.
I mean, I can't wait for Matrix
4. Yeah.
And Bill and Ted 3.
Dude, they were filming
and John Wick 4
in San Francisco, and Keanu Reeves came into an Alameda Baskin Robbins and left like a huge tip on his single cone.
Dude, Keanu Reeves like wins the internet, bro. Dude, like the guy is so just like everyone is just in love with fucking Keanu Reeves.
Dude, his life has been nothing but like at the beginning was tragic. His friend committed suicide. His wife died too from cancer, I think. And he donated all of his earnings from the first Matrix to charities. He takes the subway to this day. Oh, I mean, not right now, but he would take the subway to this day in New York to get around, to go work.
Yeah. This is why when I hear certain folks that we know who want to paint everybody who's rich and powerful into the box of being some sort of covert operative for the the lizard people, they're part of the New World Order, whatever. Sometimes people are bad for sure. There's no doubt about it. But to just describe anyone who has power or influence or money into this realm of you must all be bad people because you had to have done bad things to get to that point, and can't possibly imagine them wanting to do good things for people. I don't like that binary way of thinking. It can be a little bit of both, you know, like this idea that Bill Gates is a horrible person because of what he's done, you know, it's, or, you know, then comparing him to someone like Prince Andrew, like, oh, they're both pedophiles. They both hang out with Epstein and do this sick shit. And it's like, not everyone, I mean, people are not binary. We operate on a continuum, you know, of being good or being bad. And sometimes we do things that are really bad for good intentions. Sometimes
There's
we do things
duality to all of us. We both have a little bit of good and a little bit of evil in all of us, you know?
It's hard it's hard for someone to be purely good or purely evil.
Yeah.
Right.
Like those numbers are incredibly small.
I feel like you don't become a billionaire without stepping on a few people. But also, once you're there, if you're trying to do good for other people, it's kind of like, okay, the ends justify the means. Now with the means, or now with those ends, I'm going to,
but I mean, even in those situations, right? Like it could just be a business motivated decision. You know, like you undercut in bidding for a particular project because you know your competition is going to bid at a certain amount. So you undercut them in order to get the bid and drive them out. That's the goal of a free market, totally libertarian, let the market decide system, which is again why this idea of libertarianism as a monolith to how America should operate business wise is insane. But you know what I'm saying? You can't create people that are from certain segments as a monolith. And I mean, I think that kind of just wraps up everything we've been talking about, right? Like not all police officers are a monolith of a wretched institution that does bad things all the time. And same thing with people who are rich and powerful. Maybe they've done some bad things, but I think we can all say safely that we've done some bad things. Nobody's purely anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're all Sunday sinners or Saturday sinners and Sunday saints, you know, to a degree.
Except for Manson. That guy was purely evil.
Well, you know, I mean, it seems like Epstein might have been too. It seems like, I mean, you know, like there's always exceptions, but that's why they're exceptions to the rule. You know, like why some people would let a dog poop on the beach without cleaning up after it, and why Cody has that background right now.
It's the evil coming out of me.
It's coming out something, that's for sure. Cody, why were you late? Dude, they don't have traffic in Utah. Aren't they all on horseback?
No. There's plenty of plenty of traffic in Utah, especially because it's all growing, right? And so, like, especially in like where I live, like in the Utah Valley area, like Salt Lake area, there's just like a ton of traffic. They're like working on widening the roads right now, but for the most part, like, it's pretty, you know, pretty gnarly. So
you're traveling.
There we go.
That's really
got the world
that's really existential right there. It's the view of the earth through a droplet of the water.
Yeah, dude. Yo, think about this. Yo, quantumly, right? If you look at a quantum world, it's like very much like looks like our universe, right? So like, why couldn't we just be living in one like dimension of like this quantum reality right here? And then there's something way bigger than us, and then something way bigger than that, and it brings to mind the multiverse idea. Didn't we just figure out too, like a week ago, that there's like a different dimension that like
parallel universe
backwards or something like that?
Yeah,
I know what you guys are talking about. There was there's this survey down in Antarctica where they have a probe that sits inside the ice, and it's supposed to measure neutrinos that are getting shot by, you know, cosmic objects, whether it's the sun or something far away. You know, whenever these reactions happen, whenever atoms smash together, they give off a signature. And one of those things is typically a neutrino, which is almost massless, and it just travels through shit at nearly light speed or at light speed. And this detector in the ice was measuring a particular neutrino signal that if they would have measured one neutrino, they would have anticipated based on the math to have measured a bunch of other neutrinos because of the cosmic event. So when they only saw this particular neutrino having a certain signature, they assumed that maybe it was coming from a parallel universe, but that was the extent of what I read. I mean, but there is mathematics that indicates that there could be a parallel universe going backwards, or I mean, there's all sorts of crazy hypotheses about in cosmology and just all the different aspects that go into it, astrophysics and all this
just stuff that just flies over my head.
It's like
Cool
only
to hear
stuff
about.
to understand.
Yeah, that's crazy. We can get into that some other time. We'll have to have Carlos read a little bit about it so that you can join.
I can join in. Yeah, I would love to learn about quantum physics and parallel universes.
Honestly, dude, like when you say those words though, they sound a lot more complicated than some of the concepts are, right? Like, you understand the concept of gravity, and gravity is sort of how things in the universe coalesce and forms things like stars and galaxies and black holes. Like it's all based off of gravity essentially. And then there are the particles that sort of go into what make up those objects in the universe, right? So in terms of explaining the different, like a concept to you, that would be easy. You'd understand the concept, but I'm in the same boat, man. If someone starts talking about the actual physics or starts talking about fucking math, I'm fucked, dude. I'm not gonna understand a fucking.
I know, like as soon as you go into the details, I'm just like, ooh, all right.
Like even grasping my mind around the fact that at a quantum level, nothing is Newtonian, right? So we think of Newtonian physics and math as, for every action there is a reaction, right? So a cause and an effect. But if you go down to the quantum scale, everything's a probability. Nothing is like this or that. It's both this and that. And until you measure it for sure, then you get an answer that tells you what it is. But until you do that, it is in like some sort of
possible to measure it. Yeah, it's like because once you try to measure it, it's like the opposite.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's so what they call, like, it's like the collapse of the wave function is what it is. So like the wave function is basically a descriptor that says a quantum state of a particle could be this and it could be that, and it could be in some varied state between there, right? So like, between 1 and -1, there's an infinite number of zeros that operate within those two numbers, right? Sort of like that, right? With a quantum element, it could be spinning this way or it could be spinning that way, but until you measure it, it could be spinning either way. So anyways, yeah, it's fucking wild, man.
I mean, my dumbass, as soon as you said collapsing wave, I was thinking of an actual wave collapsing.
But it is like that, right? Because well, think about it, right? So when a wave starts to form, you don't know where it's gonna break first, right? It could break anywhere along that wave. So until it breaks, like in terms of like a Newtonian way of thinking about it, you don't know where it breaks until it breaks, kind of thing. So at a quantum level, it's sort of like that, where something is either spinning up or it's spinning down. But until then, it could be spinning, and it is spinning theoretically both ways until you measure it. So it's kind of like a wave. It could break anywhere along that wave, but until it breaks at a specific spot, it's basically a percentage given to all of those possible locations where it could break.
Yeah.
Nice. Dude, I need you to wear a lab coat the next time you explain something.
I'm just here to explain.
Luca should be an astrophysicist.
Dude, that's too much math, man.
We need to get Neil deGrasse Tyson on here. So
exactly.
Dude, he'll fill up an hour to an hour and a half just talking by himself. The last time he was on Joe Rogan's podcast,
dude, he just talked forever.
Dude, both Rogan and Jamie were like, "What?" And but dude, that's
more.
How that goes, dude.
Yeah.
The universe.
I did read his book though.
Yeah.
Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Dude, honestly, just reading that will get you a pretty decent understanding of a lot of the major concepts. Like the math still won't make sense, but if you can understand the thoughts behind it, the thought experiments, you can more or less understand how the universe functions.
Well, that's how Einstein was able to like communicate his theories were based on thought experiments at first.
He was horrible at math.
He had the special theory of relativity, right? And then the general came later. But to explain the general, he had like to put you in a thought experiment, right? And then like he wasn't able to prove it until Eddington.
Well, he wasn't good at
their
And
solar
what people
eclipse.
don't realize is that he wasn't necessarily good at the actual physics. What he did was he had an idea and, you know, wasn't great at the actual mathematics and the physics part behind it. So he enlisted the help of someone who helped explain his thought experiment into reality.
Yeah.
And it's funny because neither the special relativity or the general relativity got him the Nobel Prize. It was his input on the photoelectric effect that got him a Nobel Prize.
Which was more of a nod, but like basically being like, hey, yeah, we're gonna just nod you on this and make sure that you get something.
We can't give you 3 Nobel Prizes, Einstein, you fucking bastard. We're just gonna give you
That's what they were saying back then.
like, look, dude.
Yeah.
You can't have it.
Well,
all.
there's a lot of speculation saying that it was his wife that helped him out with a lot of the math part because she was like a crazy mathematician.
That could be because I mean it was well known that he wasn't good with the math, like with the advanced math of it, but so that makes sense actually.
Yeah. I mean, it could be.
Well, they met at was it Geneva Polytech or in college? They met in college, and she was like the first woman to like be admitted to that college, and she was like freaking wicked smart.
It was probably her, and then back in those days, women didn't really have too many rights, so he was just like, dude, let me just put my name.
Well, option, yeah. I mean, think about that.
Wicked smart. She was wicked smart.
Wicked smart. Like in the 1910s, was allowed to go to college like, as a woman. This is pre like women's suffrage movement and all that jazz. She just like
there are so many women that were contributors in that field from like 1900 to 1940.
Dude, Marie Curie, like you know what I mean, with radon.
More so than that, there was Madame Wu. She was another like astrophysicist, physicist type. I can't remember what it was that she actually had an input on, but it was a pretty marketed thing that just about anybody who is a prominent astrophysicist today or a theoretical physicist always almost certainly gives her a nod of some kind.
Damn.
Crazy. Just goes to show that America's never been that great. Oh shit.
How dare you?
That's right, I said it. It's pretty good, but I'm still trying to go to Italy.
Sometime soon, my friend.
So,
Dope. Where are we at? How do I check the time?
You don't. It just kind of
We're at 5:14 p.m. So I don't know how long you guys have been on here. I think you guys are 5 for me, so 4:14 p.m. for you guys, and you guys have been on since 3.
Hour 15. Yeah,
like that.
Not bad.
Yeah,
not bad at all.
Cool.
You guys all signing in. Let's figure out what kind of beers we want to do for Booze Day Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll get it to work this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After you upload it to the page, just delete the file somehow.
Hopefully, I won't have night practice that week. Let me double check here.
We can start early. We can do it like 2 or 3.
Yeah, the problem is I want to drink beer with y'all, and I can't drink beer before practice like that.
Dude, you're totally sober by the time you go to practice if you drink it.
2 beers.
Yeah.
2 beers, 3 men. But
all
right.
I would say let's sign off and we'll reconvene
on the group chat and get everything squared away. All right.
Good seeing everybody. You guys stay well. Be safe. Cody.
Safe.